tonight, Robin Gill.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. After weeks of growing demands for action, some disturbing new video is raising questions about police tactics here in Canada. Winnipeg police released this footage today, showing an officer kicking a suspect during an arrest. We'll have more on that in a moment. But we begin with the investigation into the violent arrest of a First Nations chief in northern Alberta. It was captured on video by an RCMP dashcam. A warning, what you're about to see is disturbing. That is Athabasca Chipewyan First Nation Chief Allan Adam being tackled to the ground and punched in the head during an arrest in Fort McMurray in March. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he watched the video and called it shocking.
Like many people, I have serious questions about what happened. The independent investigation must be transparent and be carried out so that we get answers.
Global's David Akin walks us through what we know about what happened the night of the arrest.
2 a.m. outside the casino in Fort McMurray, an RCMP cruiser's dash cam switches on to record an officer investigating an expired license plate sticker. The truck belongs to Allan Adam, the chief of the Athabascan Chipewyan First Nation. He was a passenger and his wife Frida was driving. The incident quickly escalated.
We have all now seen the shocking video of Chief Adam's arrest, and we must get to the bottom of this. Like many people, I have serious questions about what happened.
What happened was an attempt by the officer to arrest Adam's wife. Adam intervened. The officer then tried to arrest Adam. Almost immediately, a second officer jump-tackled Adam and, while on top of him, delivered a blow to the head. Adam was charged with assaulting a police officer and resisting arrest. He spent the night in jail and emerged the next morning looking like this. The 12-minute dashcam video is now evidence that Adam's legal team put before an Alberta court Thursday to have the charges thrown out. The RCMP says the actions of the officers were, quote, reasonable. Adam's lawyer disagrees.
This is one of the clearest cases of unnecessary police brutality.
Public Safety Minister Bill Blair, who is a former Toronto police chief, says in a statement, the release of dashcam footage depicts a disturbing level of force.
We also know that this is not an isolated incident. Far too many Black Canadians and Indigenous people do not feel safe around police. It's unacceptable. And as governments, we have to change that.
In the meantime, that dashcam video is at the heart of an investigation by Alberta's Civilian Police Review Agency. And that agency put out the call today for anyone else who might have video of the scene in front of that casino. And those investigators will determine if there's been any police wrongdoing. Robin?
David Akin in Ottawa. Thanks, David. Throughout history, the relationship between First Nations and the RCMP has been a difficult one, fraught with trauma and mistrust. Heather Yourex-West reports on how this new video has struck a nerve in Alberta's Indigenous community.
The images of this dashcam video are difficult to watch for anyone, but among members of Alberta's Indigenous communities, the emotions are raw.
To see that happening, it automatically brings anger to our people.
I was horrified, I was angry, and then I was, not surprised. I think we've seen videos like this before, and I've actually witnessed things like that in my own personal life.
But to fully understand these emotions and this trauma, you have to go back and understand historically the role of Canada's RCMP has not always been one of protection.
In our language, they're called Inikikwan. That means people that capture.
The whole purpose of the RCMP was to subdue Indigenous people, subdue First Nations, and ensure that they stayed on reserves.
Even in this era of reconciliation, numbers paint a troubling picture. According to the Correctional Investigator of Canada, Indigenous people make up 5% of the general Canadian population, but they account for more than 30% of the federal inmate population. The Deputy Commissioner of Alberta's RCMP this week denied systemic racism continued to exist within the organization, but on Friday he said he was wrong.
Systemic racism does exist in the RCMP. My statement earlier this week was not intended to minimize the experiences some people have endured in working with or interacting with the systems and policies of the RCMP.
These power imbalances are so deeply embedded in these systems. You know, policing is just one thing.
Lindstrom says Indigenous people have learned to navigate a society stacked against them, from the courts to schools and even healthcare. Systemic racism runs deep, and it will likely take much more than a single video to lead to any real change. Heather, Yourex-West Global News, Calgary.